Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me again. My name is Dr. Carmen Majid, and welcome back to another segment of Conversations with Carmen. This morning, I'm very pleased to be joined by Mikal Britt, licensed clinical social worker. He is not only an esteemed colleague of mine, but he is a fellow private practitioner owner and affiliated with Soul Tenders like myself. So thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, so let's dive right in. I'm very excited to get to know you a little bit more, and we've got a few questions that we'll throw your way, and let's just allow the conversation to take us where it's going to take us.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay. So you shared with me when we first chatted that you are originally from Long Island, New York.
Mhm.
So I'm just curious in general, what was it like growing up on the East Coast?
I love New York. I miss New York, but definitely when I came out to California, it felt more. I felt like I really belonged on the West Coast, kind of. But yeah, I grew up in Long Island. I went to film school in upstate New York. Graduated. 9/11 happened, and then me and a friend got a U-Haul truck, and we drove cross country to pursue our dreams of Hollywood.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
But I loved where I grew up. I wish I could go back to New York more often. It's really nostalgic to me. I miss it. I love visiting. The New York City specifically is a lot more fast paced. I dream about living there. I don't know if I actually would want to. I kind of, like I said, when I got to the West Coast, I was like, oh, this feels right. This feels right. I never quite fit in with I don't have a Long Island accent. Maybe on a couple words. I can do coffee in Long Island.
You also shared with me that you worked at a camp for autistic children one summer, and during that adventure, I believe that's what initially piqued your interest in working with autistic kiddos, autistic clients, using the ABA or the Applied Behavior Analysis approach. I think that's what I recall. So what would you like to share with us about that?
So in between gigs and trying to get little creative jobs, a friend of mine offered me this job. It was on the UCLA campus. It was a week-long sleepaway camp for over 100 kids with autism, and I knew nothing about autism. And actually, part of my role there was I was the filmmaker. It was like a filmmaking camp.
Wow!
And so I would, I was working with the campers there, and we would make skits, and we would just make make funny skits and stuff. But yeah, so they hired me to be a counselor at this camp, and it changed. It really did change my life. It opened my heart in ways that I would not have imagined. Helping someone who, some of these kids were severely impacted by autism, and realizing that I could be of service, that I could help them, and that it was fun. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was interesting as much as I thought it felt good to be of service. Yeah. And so at the end of that camp, the agency that put the camp on offered me a job as a behavioral therapist.
Wow.
You're natural, which I was like, oh, I am? Okay.
Yeah.
And I was placed in an elementary school as a one-on-one aide with this boy named Griffin, who, he's now in his 20s, and I can follow him on Facebook and see. But when I was with him at the time, he was a cute little first grader or whatever. Wow. And so, with very little experience, I was just placed in this setting, and a lot of it, I had to just rely on my instincts, my intuition, to, and it utilized skills that I use today in therapy, which is just being a good listener, being able to go into someone else's world, their experience.
So in retrospect, and if you can use Griffin as an example, how did you know when you were connecting? How did you know when that working relationship was intensifying?
Well, I think his behavior with me, the
Yeah.
reliance that his parents or the teachers, like the degree to which they knew that my presence really impacted his ability to interact. Just the way that Griffin himself would look at me, and we had so many, like, not like inside jokes, but like inside ways of communicating that only we knew about. And I, if I walked in the room and he saw me, it was almost like I could tell he was like, oh, like, okay,
I'm calm.
Yeah, I'm calm.
Yeah. I imagine that. So not only were you able to, visually recognize that calmness, for example, was coming over him, but I would imagine that a lot of your intuition, was relevant as well. Picking up energy, feeling energy,
right,
going with your gut, going with your clinical guide, and leaning in.
Yeah, that's really important. And when I had this idea when I went back to get my master's, that I was finally going to learn how to, like, be a real professional therapist, not realizing that all that stuff, the gut feeling, the energy, the intuition, like that I was on the right track.
Absolutely.
That was good enough. I wasn't going to learn anything that was going to prove that what I was doing was wrong. In fact, it just taught me that, trusting your intuition and your gut is super, super important.
Absolutely.
So the idea that I was, like, untrained didn't, I don't know. I had some idea that I was going to, like, I mean, I learned stuff in my master's program, but
it wasn't for nothing, but it was like to add to, so I believe that they're obviously we go to school, we learn about theories and modalities and we learn how to be an ethical provider and combined with who you are inherently. That's the stuff. That's the gift.
Right. Yeah. The relationship and just to see another person as another person. And that's where I think a lot of that's the art side of being, there's the science side of being a therapist, and then there's the art side, which you can't totally articulate, or sometimes.
Right. You can't articulate it, but you feel it, you sense it, and then you lead with it, which is sort of how I think about you. Yeah. Jazz Hands for Autism.
Yeah.
Excited about that. Can you share?
Yeah. Jazz Hands for Autism was a nonprofit program that was born from a chance encounter that I had with my friend Ifu Nweke, who I think she had just graduated from USC or UCLA, and she was coming into the agency that I worked at that provided ABA therapy, and so she was shadowing me for a day. And I was kind of just showing her, how you do the job, and this is what you do. And we, like, really hit it off, and we got along. And at that time, I was working with a boy named Ruben, who, again, severely impacted by autism, but had a musical gift and a charisma that was, like,
wow.
It was really, really special. And I could see that Ifu saw it as clearly as I did. Like, both of us were just, like, really moved.
Right.
And I think it was the first day I met her. Like, we were just talking, and this idea of starting a program to put on concerts where all the performers were on the spectrum.
Wow.
And so, because I was in the autism community, I knew a lot of people. I was able to kind of, like, reach out to people. I it's not uncommon that people on the spectrum gravitate towards music or have a musical gift, or there's studies about people on the spectrum having, like, perfect pitch and these types of, like, this kind of like the savant qualities. I mean, those may be overstated at times, but also I've seen them, and they do exist. And so we kind of got a group of performers together, and very what's the word, ragtag, the very ragtag kind of put this thing together. And part of the program was just teaching these kids how to perform, how to be, professional to the degree that they could be, practicing their songs.
Right.
And then we put on the first concert, and, we had a couple of performers, and they would go up and they'd play and they would sing. And, Ruben, for example, again, could be like pretty obviously, having autism and doing a lot of stimming, and then he'd get on stage and it was like, this thing would come over him and he would just start playing and singing.
Wow.
And it was like,
wow.
It was a really cool thing to witness.
It's amazing.
And I think it instilled a lot of confidence. It instilled social skills. I mean, there's so as we did the program more, we started to realize, there's more to this. Like there's learning to getting them to jam as a band, and the unspoken communication that happens in a band, being tolerant of loud noises, being tolerant of songs maybe that you don't like, and learning to appreciate other kinds of music. And and so this grassroots project just continued to grow and and gather steam. And for a while I was really involved for a few years, as in the infancy of it. And we would just put on concerts every few months. We would try to, some of the kids, we would help them they would get jobs at like I don't know what's the right way to say it, homes for older folks. Where they would,
like care living.
Because some of the kids we knew played piano, and they played a lot of like jazz standards and stuff like that. So they would get these jobs where they could actually perform and get paid. That's where the slogan, make your passion your vocation.
Your vocation, yes.
So that was at the time when I was in my master's. That was a big my thesis was on the rising population of young people with autism that were going to be entering the working force, and that our society wasn't really prepared on like how to place them in jobs. And so this idea of like creating a program that was going to help shepherd young people and guide them into actually having a career, being performers. And there wasn't really any program that existed like that. Of course, then I started my master's program. I had 2 young babies, and I kind of had to step back from jazz hands. And so pandemic happened, blah, 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 all these things happened. So I'm not involved with jazz hands anymore, but Ifu is still a good friend of mine. She is still, completely involved in it, and continues to get funding, and she's now teamed with Regional Center.
Oh,
and
wonderful.
It's just like it's a really, really cool, great
it
program.
sounds like it's evolved, and the two of you collaboratively, and then now her taking it, I think sounds like throughout the years have taken it to another level. And I really connected with what you said a couple minutes ago about encouraging the kiddos to jam together, and that means collaboration. And that means teaming and partnering. Like you said, tolerating loud music, loud noises, tolerating music that you don't necessarily resonate with. And to me, when you said that, it was like, oh, wow, challenging them to face and push through a lot of those limits, despite their diagnosis, despite them being on the spectrum,
And also, as you said that, I'm like, also community.
That's right.
Fosters community.
Absolutely.
That was another big part of it. So I mean, there's like,
that's phenomenal.
The more you do it, the more you start to realize, there's like a lot of unanticipated benefits of this program.
Yes. All because of the moving parts, and because you and Ifu leaned into those moving parts, and just kept it going. Like you said, it gathered steam. I love that. Thank you for sharing. So, like you said, subsequent marriage, babies, going back to school for your MSW. And then I think I remember you sharing with me that after you graduated, had to collect those clinical hours. And that's what led you to the world of DMH and FSP, full service partnership. So yes, what can you tell us about FSP in that world? I can see you flashing back. Like, do I really want to go back there? Yes.
It's intense.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
very, I mean, when they talk about the social workers that are underpaid and overworked and burnt
Ooh,
out,
yes.
that is what the FSP program is.
Yep. Yep. Still to this day.
As far as I know.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So, but of course, straight out of grad school, you need that first job.
For sure.
And I worked at Hillsides, which is, really great organization. And the FSP program, I wasn't sure if I'd like it, but in the beginning, I really liked it because every day is different. You're on the go. It's unpredictable. You're my job was driving all over the east side of LA. But you're dealing with very, FSP was the whatever it takes program, highest level of care before hospitalization. So you're working with just, the more, what can we say, like intense diagnoses, schizophrenia and psychosis, suicidal ideation. So I was, on available for crisis support 24/7. So I'd be getting phone calls at 2, 3 in the morning. You had to be comfortable with 5150s, and you had to be comfortable with calling Child Protective Services. But it's also, I mean, like a lot of this work, I find it really rewarding because you connect with people that have maybe never felt seen or understood before. And you make connections with people that, maybe haven't had the chance to have these types of relationships.
Absolutely.
And so I worked a lot with, teenagers, or young adults, and their families. It was kind of a wraparound system. So there would be me as a therapist, we had a caseworker, we had a parent partner, we had a psychiatrist, this whole team approach. But it was hard, the schedule. After a while, okay, at first it was cool. You never know, every day is different. After a while, you just start I started losing my mind because appointments, you can't really, I don't know, you would show up and no one would be there. You were chasing people. I was chasing people down all the time. The job really had no clear hours, no clear beginning or ending. As many clinicians know, the DMH paperwork can drive a person crazy. Is crazy a derogative?
Hey, it is what it is.
But the DMH paperwork is very intense, and there's a lot of it.
Yes.
And they demand a lot. And when you're, and then you have productivity hours that you have. There's just like the demands of the job, and then on top of that, you're also supposed to be
providing therapy. Absolutely.
And so sometimes it felt like all that other stuff just got in the way. So I think I started that job as fresh out of grad school and bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, optimistic. And I think by the time I'd collected my hours, which took 2.5, 3 years, I think I had a lot more grays. I had bags under my eyes. I was like, I'd seen a lot. I also, again, like all this stuff, I had some very special relationships, really meaningful experiences, learned a ton, but.
So 2.5, 3-ish years in an incredibly intense working environment, working with a challenging population of clients, and then private practice. Was that always on your radar? Did it come to be on your radar? And then how soon after collecting hours and becoming licensed did you launch into private practice?
I think that was always the goal. I think having a family that I needed to support, the idea of finding finding the career path that, and I mean, I didn't want to be I didn't want to be a director. I didn't want to work at DMH,
Right.
and I don't think I liked the one-on-one relationships. I like working with people, and so I didn't want to become a background person. I liked being kind of on the forefront of working with people. And yeah, that was always the intention and the goal, to start private practice, perhaps based on movies or media, is just the image of the person, the therapist who has their office and their private practice. That just seemed nice to me. That seemed like that's and so let's see. I think I passed my exam in June. I remember getting my hours back it was during the pandemic, and it was like backlogged. I had to got all my papers signed and submitted. It took a long time to get back, but I did get them back. I think I passed my exam in June, and by December of that year, I had left Hillsides and started my private practice.
Okay.
So pretty quick.
Yeah.
It was. I wasn't trying to wait around.
Right.
I was like,
time to go. Yeah.
And I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know exactly how I was going to do it.
Right.
I was really glad that one of my supervisors worked part-time with Soul Tenders, and she kind of just casually dropped the name during like a group meeting, and I was like, Soul Tenders. I wrote it down. So Soul Tenders wasn't on any of the job boards that I was looking at.
Yeah.
It just kind of came. Maybe that's the intuitive piece, right? It just kind of came to me, and I said, and I looked it up, and I think wrote them a message, and got the interview, and then they said, sure, we'd love to work with you. And then there's the whole thing of figuring out, do you want to be an S Corp or an LLC and all that paperwork. I mean, I loved that. I like having the Soul Tenders support, because my least favorite part of being a social worker or a therapist is the paperwork. It's necessary, it's required, but anything I can do to like limit the degree to which I have to put attention on that is something that I really appreciate.
Exactly.
So yeah, I mean, within 6 months, I was like, okay. And then I just, I know some people do half and half. They start private practice where they just see clients on the weekends, or they do part-time. I just was fully on board.
Right.
I left my job as an FSP therapist, and I think the next week, I didn't even take any time off. The next week, I was at Soul Tenders, and they had filled my calendar.
Yeah.
And I was seeing clients, 5 days a week. Yep. And and immediately I was like, this is great. Yeah. It's like the organization of it, of like, oh, I have a client every hour, and they show up. Yeah. And
refreshing.
It was really, it was like my brain was like, organization.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Absolutely. I'm going to embrace this. Yeah. The infrastructure is amazing. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. And you have a thriving practice. I think you shared with me that you have upwards of 40 clients, give or take, that you meet with a week. And I would love if you can share with us just that trajectory and what that's looked like, building up to such a lovely sized caseload, including your video content, your online presence. I would love to tap into that a little bit. What are you willing to share?
Yeah, so I think I started out with 25 to 30 clients, which seemed like a lot. Yeah. But I found it was manageable. And then I just built up from there. I mean, so I'm working 5 or 6 days a week. And what I find is I'm able to do it because I truly enjoy it. Yeah. I was telling my wife, if we ever win the lottery, because we might, I was like, I I would still see clients,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I would see like only 3 a day,
Right.
3 days a week, but I would still do it.
Nonetheless, I'd still be in the game.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I really, it's something that I guess the idea that if you find something you love and it becomes your job, like
Yeah.
you're lucky. You're
Absolutely.
lucky.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I just started being like, I can take one more client. I can
Mm-hmm.
take one more client,
Mm-hmm.
and it suddenly seeing 8 clients a day used to
Mhm.
seem like, oof.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's just kind of standard.
Mm-hmm. And I'm aware that you have like a social media
Right.
presence. And
Yes.
so how did you
Yes.
integrate that
Yes.
to your
Yes.
practice?
How can I mean, so before, I don't know if this is something I think about anymore, but I used to, you hear about your Dr. Phil's, or
Yes.
which I'm not saying I'm a fan of, or the idea of like, I don't know, these therapists that are also in the entertainment world.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for a time it intrigued me.
Yeah.
But so as I focused more on my private practice, for a long time, my social media was just separate from my private practice. I didn't want my therapist life to have anything to do with that.
Sure.
And then, but I would see a lot of therapists on social media that I was like, they have a lot of followers. So like they must have a lot of clients, and maybe they can start asking for a higher cash rate. And I just also thought, like, maybe I could do that. Maybe I have to stop. I kind of found it unappealing, but I had to confront that within myself. Like, what was the discomfort that I was having? Why did I think that having a public presence as a therapist on social media was like distasteful?
Right.
Yeah. And it may have just been like my own, I don't know, like lack of self-esteem or something. Like it may have just been that like I was scared to put myself out in that way. And so the decision to start creating content on social media wasn't, like many things maybe in my life, wasn't like I thought about it for a long time. I think it was New Year's Day, and I was going for a run, which is where I do some of my best thinking. And the idea just occurred to me, like, you should just post videos about therapy. Like, you have a lot to say. You have thoughts. You have interests about therapy.
Yeah.
Maybe I was listening to a podcast unrelated to therapy about financial freedom, and the couple on that were saying, yeah, they were posting videos and they would mess up, and they're like, we had to just kind of get used to it, and messing up was okay. And they were talking about their process. And I thought, yeah, I guess you just have to kind of like jump in and try it and not take yourself so seriously. And so on January 1st, I said, okay, I'm going to make, for the month of January, I'll try to create a video every day. And, if I go back to those first few videos, they're very, I'm clearly uncomfortable, self-conscious, not really in my element, but I'm trying.
Yep.
And I hit my goal. I did one video every day for January.
Wow.
And then, again, unanticipated consequences. What happened was, instead of, in my mind, oh, people are gonna, I don't know what I thought.
Yeah.
But whatever I thought, it wasn't what happened.
Right. Right.
Instead, a lot of people sent me messages that were like, oh, it's so great to see you. Or they hadn't, they didn't even know, some people didn't even know I was a therapist necessarily, like just like old friends. Or I ended up just feeling a lot of positivity from it.
That's wonderful. All right. Well, you know what? My last question for you is, someone who is tinkering with the idea of making the leap from, a full-time standard 9-to-5 job to the world of private practice, what would be would be some advice or some feedback that you could offer people?
I mean, you have to be comfortable being your own boss.
Yeah.
You have to make sure that you have the discipline, that you can rely on yourself, and that you're okay kind of operating solo, which, to me, I'm okay with that. And in fact, I have a lot of clients who talk about coworker relationships I'm like, so glad I don't have to deal with that.
Yes, don't miss that. Yeah.
But I think some people can be scared of private practice because when you go to school, they don't teach you how to do that part of it.
Exactly.
And just the fear of like, I don't know where to begin. I don't know how to start, maybe prevents somebody from doing it. And that's where, step into your power.
Yeah.
Step into your power is one of the things I would put in the category of like cheesy things that therapists say, but also like if you get past the cheesy part of it, it's very meaningful.
Very much so.
And it means something different to everybody. If I say, what does it mean for you to step into your power? It's going to be different than what it means for me. But ultimately, it means confronting that thing, that obstacle that you think is difficult, that thing that you're unsure of how to do, that thing that makes you nervous, the thing that makes you scared. Yeah. Whatever you are most ashamed of or nervous about, finding the power within yourself to not be afraid of what's on the other side of it. And I think a lot of private practice is just that. People a lot of therapists don't really know what to expect. So having the scaffolding of an organization that's going to pay you and they're going to provide you health insurance and you get your 401k. For some people, that kind of stability works for them. But I think in private practice, you also remove a lot of that scaffolding so that like there's no limit, there's no ceiling. So you also have the potential to do a lot more, to see more clients, make more money, and you become more like the architect of your own life in a way.
Absolutely.
Which, again, that's either very exciting or it's scary.
Yeah. And it can be both too.
And it can be, exactly.
It just depends on which one you want to lean into.
Yeah. So I encourage my clients, I encourage my friends, my family, everybody to lean into your discomfort, step into your power.
Yes.
I think that is where some of the biggest, changes in one's life will start to happen. Or you just stay comfortable.
You stay status quo. Sure.
Don't take any risks.
Right.
But then you really limit, you're really also limiting yourself that way.
Right. That's right. Phenomenal advice. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I couldn't agree more. All right. Well, it has been wonderful to sit here and have this great conversation with you. Thank you for showing up today and for just bringing so much transparency and authenticity to this conversation. I've really enjoyed my time with you.
Yeah.
And once again, for our viewers, this is my fellow colleague, Mikal Britt, licensed clinical social worker. And if our viewers have questions for you and would like to reach out, might they email you?
Absolutely.
What is your email address?
It is mikal.britt.lcsw@gmail.com.
Wonderful. And as always, if anyone has questions for myself, I can be emailed at cmajid.ip@soultenders.com. That's CMAJIED@soultenders.com. And if you have questions about the provider spotlight segment, specifically conversations with Carmen, feel free to reach out to Provider Relations at providerrelations@soultenders.com. Thank you so much again. This was wonderful.
Thanks.
And for everyone out there watching, thank you for joining us and see you next time.